The January wind felt like knives against my skin, slicing through my thin coat as I pushed through the glass doors of Bellissimo, the high-end Italian restaurant that had become both my lifeline and my cage. 3 months and 2 days. That's how long I'd been here. My fingers were numb, my cheeks raw from the cold, and the curls I'd carefully styled this morning now hung limp and defeated around my face. 10 minutes late. Again. "Sophia, where the hell have you been?" Marco's voice hit me the second I burst through the kitchen. The floor manager's normally calm face was tight with something that looked a lot like panic. I tied my black apron around my waist, trying to catch my breath. "Table 7, VIP, you're taking it tonight." My stomach flipped. "Wait, what? That's Jessica's section." "She called in sick." Marco's hands landed on my shoulders, his grip firm, his eyes sharp. "Listen carefully. These aren't regular guests. They're important. Don't mess this up." The edge in his tone sent a chill down my spine. I nodded, smoothing my skirt and tucking a loose strand behind my ear. I couldn't afford to lose this job. Not now. 6 months ago, I'd fled Boston with nothing but a suitcase and a handful of cash after my ex-boyfriend's obsession had turned into something darker. New York was supposed to be my clean slate, but fresh starts are expensive, and the tiny apartment in Queens drained my paycheck faster than I could make it. "Who are they?" I asked, grabbing my notepad. Marco hesitated. "Associates of Mr. Richi." My blood ran cold. Everyone at Bellissimo knew the name, whispered it actually, with that strange mixture of fear and reverence. Mr. Dante Richi, the unseen owner whose rare visits sent shockwaves through the staff. Some said he was just a powerful businessman. Others swore his power came from more dangerous circles. "They're in the private room," Marco said. "And Sophia." He lowered his voice. "Professional. Efficient. Invisible." Invisible. I'd gotten good at that. Keeping my head down, blending into the background, pretending I didn't exist. I inhaled deeply, then pushed through the kitchen doors. The main dining room shimmered in soft amber light, chandeliers glinting off crystal glassware, white linens immaculate against dark mahogany floors. The air smelled of truffle oil and old money, the kind of place where whispers carried more weight than laughter. I moved through it like a shadow, spine straight, steps measured, until I reached the hallway that led to the private suite. The heavy wooden door loomed ahead. My pulse quickened. I knocked once, softly, and entered. The room was dimmer, the lighting golden and intimate. A single round table dominated the space, surrounded by 6 men in tailored suits that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Their conversation stopped. 6 pairs of eyes turned towards me, but only one held mine. He sat at what instinctively felt like the head of the table, though the table was round, and technically, that shouldn't have been possible. His presence bent the space around him. Dark hair, sharp jaw, a face carved in control. His suit fit him like it had been born with him. But it was his eyes, calm, intelligent, and utterly unreadable, that froze me. He looked maybe mid-30s. Younger than I'd expected for someone whose name carried such silent power. I dropped my gaze quickly. "Good evening, gentlemen," I said, forcing professionalism into my tone. "I'm Sophia. I'll be your server tonight. May I start you off with something to drink?" They began listing orders: whiskey, wine, sparkling water. I noted them all with practiced efficiency, but every nerve in me was aware of him. When I reached him last, he didn't answer immediately. "You're new," he said finally, not a question, a statement. His voice was low, smooth, with a trace of an accent I couldn't quite place. "Yes, sir. 3 months. A faint curve tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Scotch. Neat." I nodded and turned to go, but the door opened. Another man entered, dressed in black, moving with the quiet alertness of someone used to watching their back. He bent close to whisper something into the headman's ear. Dante Ricci's expression didn't change, but the air around him did. A subtle shift, like a storm cloud gathering. I slipped out, exhaling hard once I hit the hallway. My chest felt tight, as if that room had stolen part of my breath. At the bar, I placed the orders, hands trembling slightly. When I returned, the mood in the room had darkened. The laughter was gone. Their voices were low, clipped. Papers were spread across the table. I moved silently, setting drinks with care. When I placed the glass of scotch in front of Richi, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I never checked personal calls during shifts, but my grandmother was in hospice care back in Italy. I'd kept my phone on me, just in case. I glanced at the screen. Her nurse. My throat tightened. I stepped back toward the door, phone in hand. "Pronto," I whispered, Italian slipping out instinctively. The voice on the other end was gentle, apologetic, and final. I closed my eyes. My hand curled into a fist. When I turned back, silence had fallen over the table. Every man was staring at me. But Ricci's gaze, it wasn't cold anymore. It was focused, intrigued. I realized too late that they'd heard me speak fluent Italian. I'm sorry for the interruption," I managed, slipping my phone away. "Would you like to order your meals now?" The rest of the evening dragged like a dream you can't wake from. I floated between the kitchen and that golden, heavy room, clearing plates, pouring wine, pretending I didn't feel his eyes on me. Once, when I leaned between two of his associates, I caught the faint scent of his cologne, wood and smoke and something dangerous. It lingered even after I stepped away. By dessert, my nerves were frayed. Their talk had turned casual, alternating between English and Italian. I understood every word, but kept my expression blank. Professional, invisible. When they finally stood to leave, it was close to midnight. I brought the check. Richi didn't even glance at it, just handed me a sleek black credit card. When I returned with the receipt, he signed his name, bold, fluid, and held it out. His fingers brushed mine, lingering just a second too long. "Grazie, Sophia," he said, my name soft and deliberate on his tongue. I swallowed hard and nodded. "Of course, sir." He was the last to leave. At the door, he paused and looked back. The corners of his mouth lifted in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Buonanotte." Then he was gone. The room felt colder without him. I cleaned in silence, pocketing the tip, more than I made in a week. But the unease wouldn't leave me. It wasn't just his presence. It was the feeling that I'd been seen. By the time the restaurant emptied out, exhaustion pressed against my bones. Grief, guilt, fear. I just wanted to go home, to book a flight to Italy, to say goodbye properly. "Sophia." Marco appeared at my side as I grabbed my coat. "Mr. Ricci would like to see you before you leave." My breath caught. "He's here?" Marco frowned. "Of course. He's been here all night." The ground seemed to tilt beneath me. The man at the head of the table, the one whose gaze had followed me like a shadow, was him. Dante Ricci. The name everyone whispered, sitting behind that door all along. Marco led me to the back office and knocked once before gesturing for me to enter. The space was small, cloaked in dark wood and quiet authority. A single lamp glowed on the desk, illuminating the man behind it. Dante Richi sat there, jacket off, white shirt sleeves rolled up, revealing the kind of strength that didn't need to be shown to be known. Shadows carved the edges of his face, sharpening the danger that already lingered in his stillness. A man stood by the door. Broad, silent, unmistakably a bodyguard. "Sit," Richi said softly, gesturing toward the chair across from him. "Per favore." And as I lowered myself into the seat, every instinct in me screamed that whatever this was, my life would never be the same again. I sat across from him, spine stiff, fingers laced tightly in my lap to hide the tremor in my hands. The silence between us felt like a test, one I didn't understand, but knew I couldn't afford to fail. Was this about the phone call? The Italian? Or had I done something worse without realizing it? "You speak Italian like a native," he said finally, not a question, but an observation. His gaze never wavered, pinning me in place. I swallowed. "I am a native, sir. I grew up near Florence." He tilted his head slightly, studying me. "And yet your English, barely an accent." "My mother was American. I grew up with both." He leaned back in his chair, as though piecing something together. "The call you received earlier? Bad news from home?" The directness of it caught me off guard. My throat tightened. "My grandmother," I said softly. "The nurse told me I should come as soon as possible. If I want to see her before—" The words dissolved. I bit down hard, blinking away the sting behind my eyes. I refused to cry in front of this man. Something flickered across his face, not sympathy exactly, but recognition, as if he knew what loss tasted like. Without a word, he opened a drawer and slid a sleek black folder across the desk toward me. "Open it." My fingers hesitated before obeying. Inside lay a first-class plane ticket to Florence, departure tomorrow afternoon. Beneath it, an envelope stuffed with cash, more money than I'd ever seen in my life. I don't understand," I managed. "I need a translator," he said calmly. "Someone fluent, authentic. My usual assistant has fallen ill. 2 weeks, Florence and Rome. The ticket and payment are yours, if you agree to work for me during that time." My thoughts spun. It felt too neat, too designed. What kind of work? "Translation during meetings, light administrative tasks. You'll manage fine." His tone was soft, confident, dangerous. I looked down at the ticket again. A lifeline. A chance to see my grandmother before it was too late. But at what cost? "Why me?" I asked quietly, meeting his eyes. "Surely you could hire someone professional." For a moment, the air between us tightened. Then his lips curved faintly. "I prefer someone real, someone who understands both languages and both worlds. Someone I've already vetted." Vetted. The word landed like a blade. My pulse jumped. How much did he already know about me? "You don't need to decide right now," he said, leaning back, voice suddenly smooth again. "The flight leaves at 3 tomorrow. If you accept, a car will pick you up at noon." The folder trembled slightly in my grip. "You know where I live?" His eyes didn't blink. "Employee records." But something in his tone told me it wasn't just that. I rose on shaky legs, the folder clutched against my chest. "I'll think about it." He nodded once. But as I turned toward the door, his voice followed me, quiet, deliberate. "Sophia, your grandmother doesn't have much time." A pause. "Neither do you." The meaning hung in the air, heavy and unmistakable. I left quickly, heart pounding as the bodyguard's gaze tracked me out through the empty restaurant and into the freezing night. Halfway home in the taxi, it hit me. He hadn't asked if I had a passport. He hadn't asked about my schedule, my availability, anything. Because Dante Richi already knew everything. And despite every alarm bell screaming inside me, I knew I would be in that car tomorrow at noon. Not just for my grandmother, but because something in his eyes told me saying no wasn't really an option. Sleep didn't come. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the darkness shifting between two faces, my grandmother's gentle smile and Richi's cold, unshakable gaze. By dawn, my decision was made. I was going. Whatever came after, I'd deal with it. I packed slowly, methodically, work clothes, neutral colors, the black dress I'd need to say goodbye to Nona, toiletries, passport, and the small envelope of emergency cash I'd hidden inside a hollowed-out book, my run money. The one I'd sworn never to need again. At 11:30, I stood at my apartment window, suitcase ready, watching the street below. The neighborhood wasn't much, cracked sidewalks, flickering streetlights, but it had been safe, anonymous. Across the street, a man leaned against a lamppost, smoking. He'd been there all morning, watching my building, watching me. When the black Escalade pulled up at exactly noon, the man straightened, murmured into an earpiece, and disappeared down the block. A text buzzed on my phone. "The car is waiting, Miss Russo." My pulse hammered in my throat. He had my number too. I took one last look at my tiny apartment, my cheap furniture, my little sanctuary, and whispered goodbye. Then I stepped outside. The driver, a broad-shouldered man with an unreadable face, took my suitcase without a word and opened the rear door. The cold wind burned my cheeks as I slid inside. The seats were black leather, immaculate, empty. "Where is Mr. Richi?" I asked. "Meeting you at the airport, Miss Russo." His eyes met mine briefly in the rearview mirror before returning to the road. I turned to the window, watching the city blur by, steel and lights and ghosts. The man who had been outside my building was now walking in the opposite direction, still speaking quietly into his earpiece. I shivered. This was no ordinary business trip. At the airport, the driver bypassed the main terminal entirely. No lines, no security checks. Just a private corridor I didn't know existed. He handed me off to a woman in a tailored navy suit, her expression perfectly neutral. "Alessandra," she said, extending a manicured hand. "Mr. Richi's assistant. He's waiting. For you in the private lounge." The lounge looked more like a luxury penthouse. Soft lighting, plush leather seats, a marble bar stocked with vintage bottles. Beyond the glass, private jets waited in the silver light of afternoon. And there, standing by the window with his back to me, was him. When he turned, the world seemed to tilt slightly. Dante Richi, perfectly pressed charcoal suit, dark hair styled with precision. The kind of man who could walk into any room and bend it to his will without saying a word. "Sophia," he greeted, his voice smooth as velvet. "I'm pleased you decided to join me." "I need to see my grandmother," I said flatly, clutching my purse tighter. Something flickered behind his calm, a faint glint of respect. Direct. I like that. He gestured toward a seating area. "Please, sit. We have some time before boarding." Alessandra vanished, leaving the two of us alone. A server appeared with coffee, Espresso for him, cappuccino for me. I hadn't told anyone what I drank. He watched me over the rim of his cup. I've arranged some additional clothing on the plane, business attire suitable for the meetings we'll attend. I brought my own, I said stiffly. I'm sure you did. His tone was polite, but his eyes said otherwise. Consider them part of your compensation. It wasn't generosity. It was control, subtle and deliberate. When can I see her? I asked, forcing the question out. He set his cup down. We arrive in Florence tomorrow morning. You'll have the afternoon to visit her. After that, I'll need you for dinner. Relief washed over me, thin but real. He leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on his knees. Let's discuss what I expect during this trip. For 20 minutes he spoke. Translation for meetings, dinner events, occasional administrative support. Nothing inappropriate on the surface, yet the undercurrent in his tone was unmistakable. By the time he finished, my skin prickled with unease. Any questions? He asked. Just one. The only one that mattered. Why me? Really? For a long moment he said nothing. Then he reached into his jacket and placed a folder on the coffee table between us. Open it. I did. The first thing I saw was a photograph. Me, 3 years ago, smiling beside my grandmother at my college graduation. Then came my degree, my employment history, old addresses. And finally, the police report. The one I'd filed in Boston. The one with photos of the bruises my ex had left on my wrists and throat. My breath hitched. How did you... I make it my business to know who works for me, he said softly. His voice was almost gentle. But his eyes, they were the same as the night before. Dark, measured, and absolutely terrifying. His voice stayed calm, sharp as glass. Even those who serve drinks in my restaurants, he said, not boasting, just stating a fact. My pulse thudded. This goes beyond knowing your staff, I wanted to scream. Instead, my words came out trembling but firm. This is an invasion of privacy. A faint curve ghosted over his lips, not quite a smile, more like the acknowledgement of a rule he'd never agreed to follow. Privacy, he murmured, is a luxury most can't afford. He slipped the folder back inside his jacket with casual precision, as though sealing away a piece of my life. Now you understand why I chose you, Sophia. You're qualified, desperate, untethered. Untethered? I repeated, anger flaring despite my fear. He looked at me the way one studies a map, every turn, every dead end already known. A dying grandmother, parents gone, no siblings, no lover since Boston, few friends. You keep to yourself. You survive quietly, efficiently. You think you've gone unnoticed, but you were never invisible to me. A shiver crawled down my spine. How long had he been watching me? Since before the restaurant? I wanted to ask, but the words died in my throat. He stood abruptly, smoothing the sleeve of his charcoal suit. Our flight is ready. The world outside blurred into motion. Through another private exit, we stepped directly onto the tarmac where a sleek jet waited, an ivory dagger against the night. The engines were already alive, whispering power. Not a first-class ticket, then. Of course not. Men like Dante didn't queue at terminals. They owned the air that carried them. Inside, everything gleamed. Cream leather seats, mahogany trim, a scent of citrus and money. 8 chairs, no, thrones, circled the cabin. A bodyguard sat near the front, broad and silent. Alessandra was already there, tapping away on a laptop. Her posture perfect, her loyalty invisible, but absolute. Make yourself comfortable, Dante said softly. his gaze flicking over me like a verdict. It's a long flight. I sank into the seat. The leather was warm, suffocating. Somewhere high above the clouds, I was now completely his, not by choice, but by circumstance. They served champagne. I refused. They brought a garment bag. I stared. Your wardrobe, Miss Russo, said the attendant with a professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. From across the cabin, Dante and Alessandra spoke in hushed tones, reviewing documents I wasn't meant to see. I tried to read. Failed. Eventually, exhaustion claimed me, and for a moment I forgot the danger wrapped in silk around me. A touch on my shoulder pulled me from the dark. For one dizzy second, I thought I was home. Then my vision cleared, and Dante Reachi's face hovered inches from mine. We're refueling, he said, straightening. Stretch your legs. We'll be here an hour. His proximity lingered like a phantom as I blinked toward the window. A small private airfield, a frozen world beyond the glass. Where are we? Iceland, he replied, sliding into his coat. There's a lounge inside. Iceland. We weren't even flying the right path to Italy. The night air bit through my coat as I followed him down the steps, each breath crystallizing in front of me. The terminal was small, modern, silent, a place where secrets landed quietly. For a moment, no one was watching. Dante had vanished down a corridor with Alessandra, his shadow of a guard left at the door. My heartbeat thundered. This is it. If I ran now, screamed for help, could I make it? Then reality hit like cold iron. My passport was on the plane. My cash, barely enough. And my grandmother. She was still waiting for me in Florence. I found the restroom, locked myself inside a stall, and tried to breathe through the rising panic. What have I done? I had boarded a plane with a man who knew every secret I'd tried to bury. Yet he hadn't hurt me. Not yet. His interest was dangerous, but deliberate. By the time I looked at myself in the mirror, I'd made my choice. I would finish this journey, see my grandmother, then find a way to disappear again, if I still could. At the small cafe, I ordered tea, my hands trembling around the cup. Outside, the jet gleamed beneath harsh lights. I barely noticed when Dante slid into the seat across from me. Feeling better after your rest? His tone was unreadable, polite, practiced. I nodded. Words felt useless. Your grandmother's condition has stabilized, he said, eyes locked on mine. I had my people call her Facility. The doctor believes she'll hold on until we arrive. I froze. You checked on her? He took a sip of espresso. It would be unfortunate if we arrived too late. I dislike wasted journeys. The indifference in his tone should have disgusted me. And yet, twisted relief unfurled inside me. At least she was alive. Thank you, I whispered. He inclined his head slightly, a gesture that somehow managed to accept and dismiss my gratitude all at once. We should return to the plane. The hours that followed blurred together, a haze of dim light, whispered phone calls, the low hum of engines. I ate when food appeared, slept in fragments. No one spoke to me, not the assistant, not the guard. It was as if Dante had made it clear I was not to be touched unless he allowed it. When dawn bled gold across the sky, the familiar outline of Florence emerged below. The Arno glimmered like a ribbon of memory. My chest tightened. Home. The jet descended gracefully. Dante moved to sit across from me, his expression controlled, unreadable. We'll be staying at my villa in the hills, he said, adjusting his cufflinks. You'll visit your grandmother this afternoon. then return for a dinner meeting. Not we'll visit, you'll go. Every word another reminder. I was here on his terms. I understand, I managed. He studied me for a beat too long, then handed over a small black phone. Keep this with you, it's secure. My number's already programmed. If there's an emergency, or anything you need, call. I nodded, feeling the invisible chain tighten. Thank you. 2 black SUVs waited beside the hangar. When I stepped down, Dante's hand pressed lightly against the small of my back, just enough to guide me, to remind me. Even through my coat, his touch seared my skin. Welcome to Florence, Sophia, he murmured, his breath brushing my ear. Or should I say, welcome home. The drive wound through the Tuscan hills, golden light, rolling vineyards, olive trees shimmering in the morning haze. The land of my childhood, now tinged with the scent of danger. I sat beside him, too aware of the silence, the rhythm of his breathing, the quiet authority that filled the car like smoke. When we finally turned down a long stone driveway, the villa appeared, majestic, sun-warmed stone and terracotta roofs framed by ancient cypress trees. "This is yours?" I asked before I could stop myself. He glanced out the window, something close to nostalgia shadowing his features. One of several, but this one is special to me. As we stepped out, staff appeared like clockwork, polished, efficient, silent. Dante issued rapid commands in Italian, his tone smooth, his control absolute. He turned to me, his presence once again swallowing the space between us. Maria will show you to your room. Rest. Eat. The car leaves at 2. And then he was gone, his entourage vanishing into the heart of the villa. I stood there surrounded by beauty and silence, trying to remember when exactly my life had stopped being mine. I followed Maria through the villa's labyrinth of hallways, doing my best not to stare like some wide-eyed tourist. The ceilings soared above us, frescoed and endless, while chandeliers spilled golden light across polished marble floors. Every wall was lined with paintings that looked as though they'd been stolen from a museum, and the scent of aged wood and lilies hung in the air like a memory. She led me up a sweeping staircase, her heels clicking in perfect rhythm, until we reached a set of heavy double doors. With a small smile, she pushed them open. "You're sweet, Signorina," she said softly. "If you need anything, just call me from the phone beside the bed." When she left, I stepped inside and stopped breathing. The room was bigger than my entire New York apartment. A 4-poster bed draped in ivory silk stood at the center, flanked by carved nightstands and velvet armchairs. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows that opened onto a private balcony overlooking the Tuscan hills. Beyond that, a marble bathroom shimmered, a shower of glass and chrome, a tub large enough for 2. My suitcase sat neatly on a rack. But what drew my eye wasn't mine at all. It was the open wardrobe. Inside, at least a dozen garment bags hung in perfect order. Curiosity won. I unzipped one and found a black cocktail dress that looked tailored precisely to my size. Another held a wine-colored blazer and matching slacks, the fabric whispering wealth between my fingers. Designer labels, thousands of dollars, maybe more. On the bed lay a small velvet box with a note beside it. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside, a gold chain with a single luminous pearl. The card read simply, "For tonight's dinner. D." I sat down, the necklace clutched in my palm, feeling the walls close in. This was no longer my world. It was his. Every detail around me, every luxury, whispered of Dante Richi's control, and with every passing gesture, every gift, I could feel invisible chains tightening around me. But in just a few hours, I would see my grandmother again. One last time. For that, I had sold myself to a man whose intentions I still couldn't decipher. A man whose dark gaze seemed to look straight through to my soul. And though I wouldn't admit it aloud, part of me feared, and part of me thrilled. I didn't know it then, but when I returned to this beautiful room tonight, nothing, not my heart, not my life, would ever be the same again. I must have slept for a few hours, exhaustion finally winning against the storm inside my mind. When I woke, sunlight spilled through the curtains, painting gold across the carpet. For a fleeting moment, I forgot where I was. Then it all rushed back. 24 hours ago, I'd been a waitress in New York, surviving on tips and stubborn hope. Now I was in a Tuscan villa, wrapped in silk pajamas I didn't remember unpacking, about to say goodbye to the only person who'd ever truly loved me. I showered beneath perfect water pressure, surrounded by the faint scent of rose and bergamot. When I opened the closet again, even my old clothes had been pressed and laundered, hanging neatly beside the new wardrobe Dante had chosen. A shiver ran through me, part gratitude, part rebellion. I reached for my own jeans and sweater. A small act of defiance, but mine. A soft knock at the door pulled me back. Maria entered with a silver tray, steaming coffee, fresh fruit, buttery pastries. "The car will be ready at 2, as Mr. Richi promised," she said in Italian. "Is there anything else you need, Signorina?" I smiled faintly. "No, thank you." She hesitated, eyes warm and knowing. "It's nice to have a compatriot in this house. Mr. Richi's guests are usually—" She stopped herself. "Usually?" I prompted gently, her lips curved into a secretive smile. "Not as genuine as you." With a curtsy, she slipped out, leaving me alone with the sound of my heartbeat. I ate slowly, savoring the sweetness of ripe berries, the flaky cornetto that melted on my tongue. Through the open balcony doors, the countryside stretched endlessly, olive groves glinting silver in the breeze, cypress trees like sentinels guarding the horizon. In another life, this would have been paradise. At exactly 2, I descended the staircase. A driver stood waiting in the foyer. Not Dante, not Alessandro, not even the silent bodyguard whose name I still didn't know. Just a man in a dark suit, posture perfect, expression neutral. "Miss Russo, the car is ready." I hesitated. "Mr. Richi isn't coming?" "Business in the city, Signorina. He asked me to take you safely to your grandmother, and to give you as much time as you need." Something inside me sank at that, a strange, unwelcome disappointment. The drive wound through the Tuscan hills, the sun slipping through olive branches. As Florence rose in the distance, memories surfaced one by one. The cafe where Nonna bought me gelato after school, the church where my parents were married, the park where I'd shared my first clumsy kiss at 15. Each landmark felt like a ghost waving from the past. The hospice appeared at the city's edge, a sleek, modern structure surrounded by quiet gardens. The driver opened my door, offering a bouquet of lilies I hadn't noticed before. "Mr. Richi thought you might want these," he said. "Take as long as you need." The sweet scent hit me instantly. I nodded, unable to speak. Inside, the air smelled of antiseptic and lavender. At the reception desk, I gave my grandmother's name. The nurse's eyes softened. "Ah, Miss Russo. Yes, we've been expecting you. Your grandmother is having a good day. Then she lowered her voice. The new medication Mr. Richi arranged has made her much more comfortable. I froze. Mr. Richi arranged her medication? She nodded, puzzled. Yes, a specialist from Switzerland arrived this morning. Didn't you know? I shook my head, speechless. While I'd been sleeping on his jet, Dante had flown in a doctor. For her. The nurse led me down the corridor to a private room. Another of Mr. Ricci's requests, she murmured before opening the door. Signora Russo, look who's here. My breath caught. The woman lying in the bed was a ghost of the grandmother I'd known, fragile, her cheeks hollow, her skin almost translucent. But when she turned and saw me, her eyes, the same hazel as mine, shone with love. Sofia, mia cara nipote. Her voice was weak but clear. I rushed to her side, setting the lilies down to take her hands in mine. Nonna, I whispered, tears spilling freely. I'm here. The nurse slipped out, closing the door quietly. For the next hour, I sat there, listening, her voice drifting between lucidity and dreams. She talked about neighbors, nurses, the weather, how beautiful I looked. Sometimes she thought I was my mother. Sometimes she knew exactly who I was. During one lucid moment, she asked softly, Tell me about America, mia cara. Are you happy there? I forced a smile. Yes, nonna. I work at an Italian restaurant. People are kind. The lie burned my throat. But how could I tell her the truth? She studied my face, sharper than I remembered. And the man who brought you home? Who is he to you? My heart stumbled. What man? The one who sent the doctor. The nurses whisper about him. They say he's powerful. Dangerous, perhaps. I swallowed hard. He's my employer. That's all. Her frail fingers tightened around mine with surprising strength. Be careful, Sophia. Men like that, they take what they want. Her gaze drifted toward the window. Your grandfather was like that. So handsome, so determined. When he decided he wanted me. She smiled faintly. There was no escape. Not that I wanted one. Her eyes fluttered closed, her breathing softening. I sat there until she slept, peaceful, unafraid. The specialist must have done his work well. Leaning down, I kissed her forehead, tasting salt and lavender, and slipped quietly from the room. At the nurse's station, I found the doctor waiting. How long does she have? I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. The doctor, a young Swiss man with kind eyes and the sort of calm that felt rehearsed, hesitated before answering. With the new treatment, perhaps a week, maybe 2. His voice was soft, clinical, almost apologetic. The cancer has spread extensively, he added, lowering his gaze, but she's comfortable now. That much I can promise. I nodded, blinking back tears I was too tired to hide. Thank you for coming all this way. He shifted, uneasy. Mr. Richi was persuasive and generous. That word again, persuasive, as if Dante's will alone could bend the world to his liking. Your grandmother is receiving the best care possible, Miss Russo. I'll be staying in Florence to monitor her condition myself. I managed a grateful smile that barely held together. Then I left the hospice, clutching the empty air where my courage used to be. Outside, the sun was sinking behind the hills, painting the Tuscan sky in ribbons of rose and amber. As the driver opened the car door, I cast one last look at the building, at the woman who'd raised me, sleeping peacefully inside. The drive back blurred into color and motion. Winding roads, cypress shadows, the ache in my chest that refused to ease. Gratitude battled grief, both of them tangled with the quiet dread I couldn't shake. Dante had done something extraordinary, something kind, but I couldn't ignore the question clawing at the back of my mind. At what cost? When we reached the villa, the sun was gone, replaced by the soft glow of lanterns along the gravel path. Maria was waiting in the foyer, her posture precise, but her eyes warm. "Mr. Richi asked me to help you prepare for dinner, Signorina. The guests will arrive at 8. I checked the clock. Barely an hour. Upstairs, a bath had already been drawn, petals floating like fragments of dreams across steaming water scented with jasmine and rose. On the bed, an unzipped garment bag revealed a midnight blue dress, elegant, understated in front, daringly open in the back. Next to it, matching heels, a small clutch, and the pearl necklace from last night. "Mr. Richi was very specific," Maria said, catching my expression. "He has an eye for these things." An eye, I thought, and a frightening understanding of my size, my style, my boundaries. I smiled faintly. "Thank you, Maria. I can take it from here." When she left, I sank into the bath, letting the hot water blur my thoughts. For a few minutes I allowed myself to drift, until clarity came, sudden and sharp. I couldn't keep resisting forever. If Dante wanted to play his game, I'd play it. I'd translate, smile, attend his dinners, wear his clothes, until I understood exactly what kind of man he truly was. I owed him that much for Nonna. But I'd keep my walls high, my guard unbroken. And if the moment came, I'd run. The dress fit like it had been sewn directly onto my skin. The fabric skimmed, my curves liquid under light. I styled my hair into loose waves, dusted my face with the illusion of calm, and fastened the pearl around my throat. When I looked in the mirror, a stranger stared back. Polished, composed, the perfect ornament for a powerful man. I was fastening my heels when a soft knock came at the door. "Come in," I called, expecting Maria, but it wasn't her. Dante stood in the doorway, black suit, white shirt, midnight tie that matched my dress. He filled the space with quiet command, one hand in his pocket, the other resting easily at his side. His gaze swept over me. Slow, deliberate. "Perfect," he said simply. The word hit like a touch. I rose to meet him. "Thank you for everything, for the clothes, and for the specialist. That was unexpected." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "How is she?" "Better than I thought she'd be. Comfortable." I hesitated. "They think a week, maybe 2. He nodded, expression unreadable. "Then let's make tonight worth your time." He adjusted his cufflinks. "The men arriving tonight, old Florence money, old loyalties. They prefer to speak Italian, though they're fluent in English. It gives them a sense of control." I caught the glint of amusement in his eyes. "And you'll let them think they have it." A small smile curved his lips. "Exactly. You'll translate everything for me. But if they say something, unguarded, something I should pay attention to." He stepped closer, his scent clean, dark, undeniably male. "You'll give me a signal." His fingers brushed the pearl at my collarbone. "Touch this," he said quietly, "and I'll know." The contact was brief, but it burned. I could barely breathe, so I only nodded. "One more thing." He reached into his pocket and produced another velvet box. Inside, a pair of pearl earrings, delicate, glinting under the light. To complete the look. I exhaled softly. "I can't accept these. The dress, the necklace. It's already too much." His expression cooled by a single degree. "You can, and you will. Tonight you represent me. Everything must be perfect." I met his eyes, a flicker of defiance beneath my calm. "And after tonight? After these 2 weeks?" Something dangerous flickered there, too quick to catch. "Let's focus on tonight, shall we?" He held the earrings out, not placing them on me, just waiting. Refusal wasn't an option. Our fingers brushed as I took them. Another gift, another chain. "The guests are arriving," he said, glancing at his watch. "Shall we?" He offered his arm. I hesitated, then took it. His strength was palpable even through the fine fabric of his suit. As we descended the staircase together, the eyes of the staff followed, curious, whispering. The dining room was a masterpiece of silver and crystal, the air humming with quiet tension. Alessandra stood near the table, checking place settings. She glanced up as we entered, her eyes flicking over me with professional precision. "The Bianchi brothers have arrived," she said. "They're in the drawing room with Mr. Cavallo. Ferrero will be here shortly." Dante nodded, his hand resting lightly against the small of my back. Steady, possessive. "Remember," he murmured as we walked, "you're not just translating tonight. You're my eyes and ears." The drawing room smelled of cigars and polished wood. A fire crackled softly in the hearth. 3 men turned as we entered, 2 older, clearly brothers, and 1 younger, sharp-eyed, sharp-suited. "Gentlemen," Dante greeted smoothly. "Allow me to introduce my associate, Sophia Russo." I smiled politely, enduring the scrutiny of 3 practiced gazes. Antonio Bianchi took my hand and kissed it with old-world charm. His brother only nodded. The youngest, Vincent Cavallo, held my handshake too long, his smile a little too knowing. The conversation shifted into Italian, fast and familiar. "You didn't tell us you'd found such a beautiful assistant, Richi," Antonio teased. "Where have you been hiding her?" "Miss Russo recently joined my organization," Dante replied evenly. "She'll assist with our discussions." "And she speaks Italian?" Marco Bianchi asked skeptically. "I was born in Florence, signore," I said in perfect Tuscan. "Lived here until I was 18. Their eyebrows lifted. Respect, or recalculation. Maybe both. Before they could ask more, the final guest arrived. Elio Ferrero. Younger, confident, the kind of man used to commanding rooms just by smiling. "Dante," he greeted, embracing him like a brother. "You've outdone yourself this time." Dante's hand tightened fractionally at my waist. "Elio, this is Sophia Russo, my associate." Ferrero took my hand, eyes gleaming. "Enchanté," he said in Italian. Truly enchanted. Dinner followed, candlelight, crystal, laughter that carried a hidden edge. I sat to Dante's right, Ferrero directly across, his gaze lingering far too often. Wine flowed, conversations meandered through politics and sports, but eventually they found their way to business, the real reason we were there. Dante wanted a shipping company tied to all 4 men. The talk turned sharp, numbers and threats wrapped in civility. "The price you offer is insulting," Marco Bianchi said bluntly. "The company is bleeding money," Dante countered smoothly. "I'm doing you a favor." They argued, voices tightening, egos clashing in velvet tones. I translated carefully, each word precise. And as I did, I began to understand just how dangerous Dante's intelligence truly was. Then, as dessert arrived, Ferrero leaned toward the others, speaking quickly in Italian, assuming Dante wouldn't catch it. "Let him take it. The real value's in the Lavoro warehouses." He doesn't know about that. My hand moved instinctively, fingers brushing the pearl at my throat. Dante's gaze flicked to me, then back to Ferrero, his expression perfectly calm. "Gentlemen," he said, switching to English, "I believe we're close to an agreement." He proposed new terms, including, to their shock, full rights to all existing inventory, Lavoro warehouses included. The air froze. Ferrero's smile vanished. He turned toward me, suspicion sharpening. "You said she was just an assistant," he hissed in Italian. "I said she was my associate," Dante replied evenly, "and a valuable one." The temperature in the room shifted. Tension thickened, heavy as smoke. I kept my face still, but inside my pulse raced. In a single gesture, I'd altered the course of their deal, and maybe my own fate. Negotiations dragged on until midnight. Voices softened. Contracts found shape. By the time the men finally rose from the table, the deal was done, and I understood for the first time the true power of the man beside me. Maria's words lingered long after she'd gone, quiet, unsettling, and impossible to unhear. He takes what he wants, and when he's finished. She hadn't needed to complete the sentence. I understood. I wasn't the first woman to walk these marble halls wearing borrowed jewels and a borrowed purpose. I was just the newest face in Dante's curated collection. The latest temporary obsession to serve a purpose before being swept aside when the intrigue faded. The realization should have steeled me, should have made it easier to detach. Instead, it hollowed me out, because beneath all the logic and self-preservation, it hurt. I dressed in my own clothes that morning, jeans, a soft sweater, boots worn from years of city sidewalks, armor of authenticity. No designer silk, no pearls, no illusions. If I was going to be replaced eventually, I would at least leave as myself. The villa was unusually still when I descended the staircase. The echo of my footsteps felt intrusive. No Dante, no Alessandro. Only the quiet efficiency of staff who appeared and vanished like ghosts. When a chauffeur offered to bring the car around, I nodded wordlessly. At the hospice, Nona was awake, more alert than I'd seen her in days. The frailty of her body couldn't hide the brightness in her eyes when she saw me. "There you are, mia cara," she whispered, patting the bed beside her. "I dreamed of you last night." I smiled, taking her hand, feeling the fragile warmth of her skin. "Good dreams, I hope." "You were little again," she said, her smile soft, "running through the olive groves, laughing." Her voice faltered. "Before your papa and mama?" "Before they died," I finished quietly. Tears shimmered in her eyes. "Life was not kind to you, piccola mia. Too much loss for one so young." I squeezed her hand gently. "I had you, Nana. That was enough." For a time, silence settled between us, peaceful, full of the kind of understanding words can't reach. Then she fixed me with a gaze sharp enough to cut through any illusion. "Tell me about this man, Dante Richi." My breath caught. "He's complicated," I said carefully. "Powerful. Used to getting what he wants." "And what does he want with my Sophia?" The question sank deep, like a hook beneath the ribs. I didn't know. Not really. My language skills? My body? My silence in matters that weren't meant to be spoken aloud? "He brought me here to see you," I said finally. "For that, I'm grateful." "At what price, mia cara?" Before I could answer, the door opened. A nurse entered, followed by the Swiss specialist. They spoke softly, businesslike. I stepped out into the hallway, leaning against the cold wall, exhaustion pooling under my skin. "She looks better today." The voice startled me. Dante stood at the end of the corridor, perfectly composed in a charcoal suit that made him look carved from dusk itself. "What are you doing here?" I blurted, my surprise slipping past courtesy. He approached slowly, hands in his pockets, eyes unreadable. "I came to check on her progress." A pause. "And to see you." I crossed my arms, instinctively on guard. "Why?" He hesitated, a flicker of something almost human softening his expression. "Because I wanted to apologize for last night. I overstepped. Of all the things I expected, that wasn't one of them." "Yes," I said quietly. "You did." The faintest smile curved his lips. "You're not going to make this easy, are you?" "Should I?" "No," he admitted. The smile deepened, faint, genuine. "That's what makes you different." Different. The same word Maria had used hours earlier. Only from his lips it sounded dangerous, like a promise or a warning. He shifted the subject. "The doctors say she's responding well. More comfortable, more alert." I nodded, grateful despite myself. "Thank you again for arranging it. I know it couldn't have been easy." He waved the gratitude away. It was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. He'd given me something priceless, more time with the woman who raised me. Whatever his reasons, I couldn't dismiss that. The doctor emerged a moment later, giving a professional smile. "She's asking for you. Try not to stay too long." I turned toward the door, then hesitated, looking back at Dante. "Are you coming in?" His brows lifted slightly as though the question caught him off guard. "Would you like me to?" It was a simple question, yet something about the way he asked it made my chest tighten. For once, he wasn't commanding. He was asking. "Yes," I said softly. "I would." Inside, Nona's eyes widened when she saw him. I introduced them, watching as Dante approached her bedside with surprising gentleness, bowing slightly before taking her frail hand. They spoke in Italian, his fluency effortless, his tone respectful. They talked of Florence, of the warm autumn, of my stubbornness. Then Nona looked at him with that same piercing gaze that had undone me so many times. "You are the one who brought my Sophia back to me." "Yes," Dante said quietly. "Why?" He hesitated, his eyes flicking to mine before returning to hers. "Because she deserved to say goodbye, and because I needed her help." Nona nodded slowly, like she was confirming something she already knew. "And when you no longer need her help?" I felt heat crawl up my neck. "Nona, please." Dante's hand lifted, silencing me gently. "A fair question," he said. He met her eyes. "I don't know yet. That will depend on Sophia." The honesty, or what passed for it, unsettled me more than any lie could. Nona studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "You have your father's eyes," she murmured. Something shifted in Dante. His posture stiffened, his composure cracked for just a heartbeat. "You knew my father?" "Many years ago," Nona said, her voice drifting somewhere between past and present. "Before he left Italy for America. He was a good man, beneath it all. I hope you are the same." A shadow crossed Dante's face, dark and dangerous. I stepped in quickly, changing the subject, steering the conversation toward safer shores. We stayed nearly an hour longer. Nona told stories from my childhood. The time I painted the olive trees blue. The time I hid in her flower cupboard to escape a thunderstorm. Dante listened, laughing softly at the right moments, his guard lowered just enough for warmth to slip through. By the time her eyelids grew heavy, the room felt lighter somehow. Like for a brief stolen hour, we'd all forgotten the edges of the world outside. Come back tomorrow, mia cara, Nona said, squeezing my hand. Bring him, if you like. Her eyes twinkled with mischief. He's more handsome than your grandfather ever was. Nona! I gasped, horrified. Dante laughed, a low, rich sound that rolled through the room. It would be my pleasure, Signora Russo. He bent to kiss her hand. Until tomorrow. In the corridor, I turned to him. What did she mean about your father? Did they really know each other? His expression hardened instantly, shutters slamming down behind his eyes. Your grandmother is mistaken. My father never lived in Italy. The lie was immediate, too smooth, too careful, which meant it mattered. He straightened, all business again. We have a meeting in Milan this afternoon. The car will take us to the airfield in an hour. Wear something professional, from the wardrobe I arranged. Just like that, the warmth evaporated. The man from Nona's bedside was gone, replaced by the calculating one from the negotiations. I wanted to push, to demand the truth. But I bit it back. There was time, and the truth had a way of surfacing on its own. I'll be ready, I said. The drive back to the villa was quiet, Dante absorbed in his phone, his focus razor sharp. I watched the countryside blur past, my reflection ghosted in the tinted glass. Questions churned in my mind. Who was his father? What did he mean to my grandmother? And why did Dante lie? At the villa, I changed quickly. The navy suit hanging in the wardrobe fit like a secret, tailored, elegant, sharp. Paired with a white blouse and low heels, it made me feel capable, controlled. When I descended the stairs, Dante was already in the foyer, speaking in low tones to Alessandra. He looked up as I approached. His eyes swept over me once. Slow, assessing. Then came that familiar, quiet approval. Perfect, he said. And for one dangerous heartbeat, I wanted to believe him. The morning broke with a sharp hum of engines from the courtyard below. When Dante told me the helicopter is ready, it barely registered at first. Of course, helicopter. Why drive when you can soar above everything? Traffic, distance, reality itself. Within the hour, we were slicing through clouds, Florence shrinking to a watercolor beneath us. The blades roared overhead, the air alive with controlled violence. Dante sat beside me, silent, composed, a man entirely at ease with owning the sky. Milan came into view in less than an hour, all steel and glass, sharp edges gleaming under pale sunlight. We landed on the rooftop of a skyscraper that seemed to pierce the clouds themselves. Waiting there, another car, another symbol of precision and wealth. The meeting was with executives from the shipping company he'd negotiated with at that elaborate dinner days ago. But this time, there were no games. Only signatures, contracts, and the quiet efficiency of power being transferred. I translated when needed, though my presence felt less functional than decorative. A bilingual ornament to his empire, another reflection of his influence, a living accessory whispering sophistication. Still, every so often I felt his gaze. Not constant, not indulgent, just flashes. Quick, intense, charged, as if he were studying me, not as an employee, but as something else. Something had changed between us since our visit to Nona. Something I couldn't yet name, a fragile thread humming between distance and desire. After the meeting, we had lunch at a rooftop restaurant overlooking Milan. Endless glass tables, pale sun spilling across white linen. Only the two of us. Alessandre and the bodyguard lingered just far enough away to become invisible. You did well today, Dante said, pouring wine into my glass without asking. His tone was calm, approving. The CFO was impressed by your financial insight. I took a small sip. The wine was liquid velvet. I did minor in finance before switching to international business. He smiled faintly. I know. I raised a brow. Of course you do. The background check. Naturally, he said, as if it were the most reasonable thing in the world. He probably knew more about my life than I did. Every school, every heartbreak, every lost opportunity mapped and memorized. Then, almost unexpectedly, his tone softened. Your grandmother, she's remarkable. A genuine smile tugged at my lips. Yes, she raised me after my parents died. Worked 2 jobs, never once complained. She deserves better than what she's facing now. His eyes darkened, not with pity, but with something deeper. Death comes for us all, Sophia, he said quietly. The manner of it matters less than what we leave behind. I studied him across the table, intrigued despite myself. And what do you hope to leave behind, Dante? He swirled his wine, eyes fixed on the crimson reflection. An empire that won't collapse when I'm gone. Something that endures, even without me. Children? I asked before I could stop myself. His gaze flickered, just for a moment, but enough. Perhaps someday, he said, his voice lower now. With the right person. The implication shimmered between us like heat above asphalt, unspoken, yet undeniably there. I looked away, heart pounding too fast. What's next on the schedule? Back to Florence, he said. There's a gallery opening tonight. Unless... His eyes softened. You'd prefer to rest? There it was again, asking, not commanding. The smallest shift, but I felt it. I'd like to go, I said. His lips curved, satisfied. Good. There's a dress waiting in your room. Let me guess, I teased. Already selected? He had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. I have particular tastes, but if you'd rather choose... No, I interrupted, surprising myself. I trust your taste. The words hung between us, heavier than they should have been. Trust. Such a small word for such a dangerous thing. Did I trust him? With my wardrobe, maybe. With my safety, possibly. With my heart? Never. The return flight was drenched in late afternoon gold. The Tuscan countryside shimmered beneath us, vineyards and terracotta roofs scattered like pieces of a fading dream. Dante sat beside me this time, close enough that every subtle motion of the helicopter brought us into brief, electric contact. His thigh brushed mine once, then again. Each touch sent a quiet current through me, unwanted, undeniable. When we landed, Maria was waiting. Your grandmother's doctor called, she said softly. Stable. No better. No worse. Relief washed through me. Another day. Another chance. Another unanswered question about her connection to Dante's family. The dress waiting in my room was emerald silk, fluid, understated, almost too perfect. It caught the green in my eyes, softening me in ways I didn't expect. Beside it sat a small velvet box. Inside, a gold bracelet inlaid with tiny emeralds. Old, exquisitely crafted. I ran my fingertip along the delicate metalwork, tracing stories I'd never know. It wasn't new. It carried history, maybe heartbreak. Another beautiful tether. Another chain. I dressed slowly, letting the fabric glide across my skin, my hair falling in loose waves over one shoulder. The bracelet caught the light as I moved, a constellation of secrets against my wrist. A knock at the door. When I opened it, Dante stood there, black suit, emerald tie, the exact shade of my dress. Intentional, no doubt. His eyes traveled over me, lingering just long enough to make my breath catch. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you." I touched the bracelet. "This is incredible. Vintage?" "It belonged to my mother," he said, voice carefully even. "It suits you." The air between us shifted. His mother's bracelet. Not another purchase, not another performance. Something real. "Dante, Before I could finish, his phone buzzed. He frowned. "Change of plans. The gallery's been moved to a private showing at Martelli's villa. Smaller crowd, more exclusive." He looked at me. "Is that still acceptable?" I nodded. "Of course." But inside, curiosity bloomed. About the venue, about him, about this new version of Dante who offered heirlooms and asked permission. The car wound higher through the hills, headlights carving paths through the darkness. Cypress trees lined the road like sentinels. Occasionally, the lights caught a stone wall, an iron gate, the silhouette of an old estate perched against the night. "Martelli," Dante said, breaking the silence. "Collector of modern Italian art. He hosts private viewings for serious buyers before public openings." "And you're one of them?" He smiled, a flash of white in the dim cabin. "On occasion. I appreciate beauty in all its forms." His gaze met mine in the darkness, deliberate, lingering. Heat unfurled low in my stomach. I turned away, pretending to study the city lights below. The Martelli villa emerged like a secret carved into the hillside, all glass and stone, sleek lines reflecting the scattered glow of Florence beneath us. The Duomo shimmered on the horizon, a ghost of the old world watching from afar. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed with wealth and cultured restraint. Perhaps 30 guests, champagne flutes glittered, laughter drifted like smoke. A string quartet murmured in one corner. Dante's hand found the small of my back as we moved through the crowd, subtle, possessive, claiming. He introduced me to people whose names I instantly forgot, pausing here and there to admire a painting, a sculpture, a conversation worth buying. His knowledge surprised me, fluent, insightful, precise. He didn't just collect art, he understood it. "You actually enjoy this," I murmured. "It's not just for show." He tilted his head, amused. "You sound surprised." "Most men in your position collect art as trophies, not passions." "Men in my position?" he echoed, his tone teasing. "And what position is that exactly?" I hesitated, then said softly, "Powerful. Wealthy. Used to displaying it." He nodded, conceding. "True. But life offers few pleasures that feel genuine. Art is one of them." Before I could reply, a tall, silver-haired man approached, with outstretched arms. "Dante, finally! You grace us with your presence." "Carlo," Dante said warmly, embracing him. "Your exhibition is magnificent." The man's eyes shifted to me, curious and bright. "And who is this vision?" "Sophia Russo," Dante said without hesitation. "A colleague and a friend." The words caught me off guard. Friend. "Sophia," Carlo said, taking my hand. "Any friend of Dante's is a friend of mine." He leaned in, voice conspiratorial. "He's been alone too long. It's good to see him with someone worthy of his attention." Before I could correct him, he was pulled away by another guest. Dante sighed, half amused, half exasperated. "Forgive him. Carlo's been trying to marry me off for years." "Do you?" I asked lightly. "Work too much?" He considered the question, eyes distant. "Probably. My work doesn't leave much room for conventional relationships." "Because of the hours?" I asked softly. "Or the nature of the work?" His gaze snapped to mine, sharp, assessing. "Both," he said finally. We drifted toward a massive abstract canvas, all crimson chaos and shadow. But the conversation lingered like perfume, intoxicating and unfinished. What was it exactly that made Dante Richi's life so incompatible with love? The business dinners, the shipping acquisitions, they seemed legitimate enough on paper. And yet, beneath it all, there were undercurrents, whispered references to warehouses, customs officials, things that didn't belong in daylight. I looked at him across the gallery, at the man who could quote Monet one moment and command empires the next. And I realized, not for the first time, I was standing beside a man built entirely of contradictions. And I was falling deeper into every one of them. It began with a phone call in Italian. A moment so small it should have meant nothing. And yet, it changed everything. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I hadn't answered it. If I'd let it ring out, gone back to serving coffee, living quietly, pretending the world outside my tiny apartment didn't exist. But that one decision, that one reflex, drew the attention of a man like Dante Richi. And the moment his world collided with mine, I never stood a chance. Now, years later, I sit by the same window where I used to wait for dawn, the same view of snow-capped peaks, and the same echo of silence, but everything inside me is different. The air in Switzerland is thin, sharp, and clean. It carries the scent of pine and smoke, the weight of memories I can't wash away. Below the valley, the lake reflects the moon like a blade, still, but never harmless. It reminds me of him. Dante stands on the terrace, as he always does at night, glass in hand, his gaze fixed on the distance. He doesn't speak, but he doesn't have to. I've learned to read the silences between his words, the tension in his shoulders, the small, almost imperceptible shifts that betray what he's thinking. That's the language of our love, unspoken, dangerous, real. Ferrero is gone now. The river in Florence took him one winter night and returned nothing but whispers. The papers called it an accident. But there are no accidents in Dante's world, only messages. And his message was received, loud and clear. The Bianchi brothers fled to Monaco. The ones who stayed fell in line. The empire Dante built, and nearly lost, stands stronger than ever, restructured, invisible, untouchable. But power is a fragile thing. It feeds on secrets, and secrets have sharp teeth. Sometimes I wonder what that makes me. His secret, or his shield. When Nona passed, Dante stood beside me in the frozen cemetery, his coat dark against the falling snow. He held my hand without speaking, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw tears he didn't bother to hide. Not many people would believe that of him, that the man whispered about in boardrooms and back alleys, the man people feared and respected in equal measure, could cry for someone else's grandmother. But I saw it. And I think that's when I finally stopped running. Months became years. The villa in Florence was sold, its art moved, its rooms emptied. We live now between worlds, between shadows and light, between his empire and my ghosts. In public, he's untouchable. In private, he's just Dante. At night, when the world grows quiet and his guards fade into the background, he lets me see the man he hides from everyone else. The boy who once watched his father's empire fall apart. The man who built it back from the ashes, piece by piece, until it became something even more dangerous. Sometimes, in those rare moments of honesty, he asks if I regret it, leaving my life behind, stepping into his. I never answer. Instead, I trace the scar on his shoulder, the one that runs like a pale river down his skin. He got it long before me, in another war, another life. But now, it's mine too. Because that's what love becomes when it's forged in darkness. It brands you. It burns through your innocence until all that's left is truth. He once told me, arrangements can change, Sophia. He was right. So did I. The girl who once believed that goodness was safety, she's gone. What's left is someone stronger. Someone who understands that the world isn't divided into saints and sinners, only into those who choose and those who are chosen. And I chose him. When we married, it wasn't in a cathedral or under a canopy of roses. It was in the marble hall of our Alpine estate, just us, 2 witnesses, and the echo of vows we didn't need to speak aloud. There was no priest, no promise of forever. Only the steady look in his eyes when he slid that ring on my finger, his grandmother's ring, and whispered, "Mine." It should have frightened me. Maybe once it would have, but not anymore. Because the truth is, belonging to Dante doesn't mean losing myself. It means finding the parts of me I didn't know existed, the ones that can survive fire and still love what caused the burn. Now, when the sun rises over the Alps and the light spills across our bedroom, I wake to find him watching me, his hand tracing lazy circles against my skin, his expression unreadable. Sometimes I think he's still waiting for me to disappear, like all the others did before me. But I'm still here, and I will be until the end. He told me once that he doesn't believe in redemption. I think he's wrong. Maybe redemption isn't found in churches or confessions. Maybe it's found in the simple act of holding someone close and choosing them again, every day, despite the darkness. That's what we are, Dante and I. Not saints, not heroes. Just 2 imperfect souls who met in the wrong world and decided to stay anyway. And when I think back to that night in Florence, to the woman I used to be, I realize something simple, something terrifying, something true. If I had the choice again, I'd answer that phone call the same way. Every single time. Soft, cinematic pause, her tone lowers, intimate, almost like a secret shared with the audience. If you've stayed with me through this story, if you've felt the pull of the shadows and the heartbeat of what we built, leave me a comment below. Your words, they're the only light that keeps these stories alive. And if you want to walk with me through more worlds like this, don't forget to subscribe to Mara's Betrayal, where love is never simple and danger is just another way of saying desire. Fade out. The wind sighs through the pines, then silence.